Hello! So you are here for a free Learn to Knit class. I'm Kelly from Chicory Pond Farm. We're going to wait for a little bit and see if some more people are going to come in, and then we will go ahead and get started. I will tell you guys a little about me while we're waiting for people to join. So I taught myself to crochet, and then I taught myself to knit, and I've been knitting for 14 years now, and I always have people say to me that they wish they could learn how to knit, so I just thought this would be something fun that I could help some people. I'm going to do I'm going to call this my Back to Basics series, and I'm going to do some other classes, some other free classes in this series. So, one of those will be learn to crochet, learn to sew on a button, stuff like that. If you guys have a request for a class, let me know, and if it's something I know how to do, I will see if I can do it. This will be available for a free replay on YouTube, on Instagram TV. I will link the YouTube channel in the comments, the discussion of this live event, and I'll probably post it on the page also. Also, I just launched a new hashtag, FarmFolksCan, and you can get merchandise for 15% off in my store right now through Sunday while I am doing my big birthday giveaway on Instagram. So if you guys want to take advantage of that 15% off, that ends on Sunday. I am going to grab some chapstick really quick. So, yeah, 15% off through Sunday. If you haven't checked out that giveaway yet, it's huge. Go check it out for sure. It ends on March 14th at midnight Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, it's got some really, really good stuff. So you should definitely check it out. I'm hoping we're going to have some people join us, so it doesn't look like we've had a lot yet. Wait a few more minutes. Let me see the time. Yep. We'll wait a few more minutes, and then we will go ahead and get started. So, Chicory Pond Farm this year is going to be offering meat birds, which you can pre-order by sending me a message and letting me know how many you would like. We are going to be selling seedlings and potted plants and hanging plants. If you're interested in either of those things, you can also send me a pre-order request for those. I am hopefully going to be at the Lexington Stockyards sometime soon. I'll post when I'm going to be there. Hello, thank you for joining. And I also am going to be selling some syrup. I'm probably not going to have a ton, but if syrup is something you're looking for, send me a message, and I will see if I can get you some syrup. Hello, Jennifer. Thanks for joining. So I'm waiting just a few more minutes to see if we have a few more people join. And like I said, that was a little bit about me. I've lived at this farm for about 6 years, and I started actually farming small scale at my rental place where I used to live. So I hope you guys have your materials. You have knitting needles and yarn. And if you don't, that's okay. You can watch, and then you can come back and rewatch it to learn. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera. This might not last a whole hour. I wanted to make it for an hour just to make sure that we had enough time, but it might not last a whole hour. But let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I just got a notification that I'm live now. All right. Let me see if I can get this set. Okay. Jennifer, where are you from? Are you from Michigan? Or where are you watching from? So really quick, I'm going to get the nasty out of the way. This is an absolutely free class. You do not have to donate anything. But if you are watching this and you want to donate to help the farm with, you know, feeding the animals or paying the bills, any of that, here is my Cash App and my PayPal. I don't know for sure if it needs this little $sign. I don't ever use that very often, so I'm not sure. But feel free. Any donation is appreciated, but I want this information to be available for free to everybody, so it's definitely not required by any means. Okay, so first I'm gonna tell you guys a few of the knitting supplies. Like, I'm just gonna tell you what they are, so that way you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about certain things. So here's my yarn that I'm going to be using tonight. I hope you guys can see that it's bright enough. So first, let's talk about the different kinds of knitting needles. This is a straight needle. You always use 2 needles when you knit. So a straight needle is exactly what it sounds like. It's straight. It has a stopper on one end, and that says it's a size 6. Sorry if that was blurry. There we go. These are great if you're knitting something small, like a washcloth, but they're kind of longer. I don't know if you guys can see that with my hand, to where they almost get a bit clumsy if you're not used to them, because you have this big long end just kind of flopping around. And this one has a nice big stopper, but they don't always. And so sometimes you can lose stitches off the end if you're knitting something really big, like a blanket. So I actually don't prefer straight needles. I do use them occasionally. I love these beautiful rainbow needles. They are from Knit Picks. Even though they're wood, they are rather fast, meaning they are smooth and they don't grip the yarn a lot. So I really like these. But that is a straight needle. Then we also have a cable needle. This wants to get stuck on stuff. So a cable needle, which is what I recommended. Circular needle is also what it's called. It has your 2 needles, and they are connected with a cable in the middle. You can use these for all kinds of stuff. They can be used to knit something large that is circular, and then you would just work your way around the outside of the needles. They can also be used to knit something flat, and then this cable just ends up holding your work in the middle, and that's really nice because you don't have to worry so much about dropping stitches. These are metal. They're not great for beginners because the yarn can slip off easily. I love metal because I've been knitting for a while, so I can knit quickly. But for a beginner, I would recommend wood or bamboo. It's going to grip your yarn a lot easier, so that when you're trying to make those stitches, until you get a handle on putting your finger on your stitch so that it doesn't drop off your needle, I don't recommend metal. Okay, moving right along, this is a double pointed needle. It's exactly what it sounds like. I don't know if I can get the whole thing in frame. There we go. It has a point at each end. These are used usually in sets of 3 to 6, and they're for knitting small diameter things, and it will look almost like a triangle or a square, and you knit around each side when you're using these so that you can make something really small diameter. You can use these to knit flat projects as long as it's something small. Okay, and then just to show everybody the difference, this is a crochet hook. It is not the same as a knitting needle. A lot of people mix up knitting and crocheting. This is actually you use it by itself. So knitting, you always use 2 needles, and crocheting, you use 1 crochet hook. So this is a crochet hook. I am going to do a crochet class, but this is a knitting class tonight, so we're going to put that away. Hello, whoever is new. I don't know why it didn't tell me your name. We're almost done with going through some terminology, and then we're going to get started. So these are stitch markers. They're just really adorable. Somebody sent them to me. And when you are knitting something big, you might need, I was playing in the garden. Sorry if my nails are dirty. I thought I cleaned that, but anyways, these are when you need to mark a certain spot in your knitting, you put these on your needle in between your stitches. When we do the knit a sweater class, then we'll use stitch markers. Hi, Jordan. I'm glad you're here. Okay. So, and then this is the last thing I wanted to show you guys aside from yarn. This is a knitting gauge. I absolutely love this. If you don't know, the knitting needles don't always have the size printed on them, which is an absolute pain. Like this, I know that this is a size 7 because I just remember. It doesn't say that anywhere on it. And when you get a bunch of knitting needles like I have, you start forgetting what size is what. So you can slide your needle through the hole and see that fits perfect. So I know that's a size 7. And then that brings me to, you can also use these rulers to measure your work when you're working, and it tells you to work for, 5 inches in your pattern or something like that. You can use it to measure your knitting. So this is really handy, and it's only like $3. Okay, and then I just wanted to show you guys some yarn and talk a little bit about needles and yarn gauge, so that is one of the biggest mistakes that beginners make, is not properly matching their needles to the gauge of their yarn. So this is some absolutely gorgeous hand-dyed wool from Mosaic Moon, which is one of my favorite dyers, and it's hand-dyed wool. And then I'm going to show you guys the label because this is super important. Look, that's how long ago I bought this. 10 years ago. But so this colorway is called Spring Sunrise. That's what that means right there. And then it tells you the base, which is organic Gaia merino wool. Sometimes that will be polyester. Sometimes that will be silk or alpaca or cotton. But you'll just look for what type of fiber it is on there. And then this is the really important part right here, worsted. Once we start getting into making patterns, this amount, 280 yards, or 4 ounces, sometimes patterns will tell you the amount you need in ounces. Those will be important because you will need to know how much yarn you need to create the item that you're trying to make. But for right now, we're just going to focus on this, worsted. So if you don't know what size needles, go with what weight of yarn, that's the weight, is worsted. Then you can look that up online, but typically, so there's lace weight all the way up through super bulky, but there's even one thicker than super bulky that I cannot remember the name of right now. But so it goes lace, fingering, I think DK is next, then sport, worsted, and you can get even more technical like light worsted and heavy worsted in there, but we're going to not worry about that right now. Worsted, Aran, bulky, and then super bulky. This is super bulky. It might just be bulky. All of those sizes are kind of open to interpretation a little bit. And I'm using some really, really big needles. They're actually a smidge too big for this yarn, but I thought it would be really nice and easy to see what I was doing with these giant needles and this colorful yarn that stands out against the needles. So now we're going to get started. Yay. Sorry for that big long explanation, but it's all important stuff. So take your needles and take your yarn, and you're going to want to pull out a piece of working yarn. Now, you might not have a center pull ball like I do. That's what this is. It was wound on a yarn ball winder. It started as a skein like this, right here. I used to say skein. I don't actually know how you say that word, guys, but that's what I'm going to say. So it started as this, and then it gets wound into a center pull ball. Now, if you buy yarn from the store, from like the craft store, it already has a center pull. You just have to find the loose piece in the middle. The reason a center pull is nice is because I can pull yarn out like this, and all this stays intact rather than having to unwrap it from the outside. But if you do unwrap it from the outside, it's perfectly fine. It's no big deal. But so I like to pull out a little length of yarn. I'm actually putting it back out of the camera's view. So pull out some yarn so you have some to work with. I don't know why there's a knot in the end of this, but we're just going to leave it there. This is not my preferred cast on, but it is the absolute easiest. So it's why I wanted to show it to you guys, okay? So you're going to take 2 fingers, hold your yarn with your thumb on your 2 fingers. Then we're going to wrap around those 2 fingers and flip. So I have yarn on both sides. And then we're going to pull the yarn up and make an X. Okay? I'm going to show that one more time. If I am doing something and you guys don't understand and you need me to go back, just comment and let me know and I will go back. Okay? So one more time. 2 fingers, lay the yarn from top to bottom. Or, I'm sorry, from bottom to top. You want your tail on the bottom. Lay your yarn, hold it with your thumb, wrap it around, and then make an X. Okay, so we've made our X. Now we're going to take the point of our needle. We have our X. We're going to reach under. It's really hard to do while I'm trying to look at the camera and do it. I'm going to reach under this right top side of the X and grab this loop and push down. I pushed down and towards myself and pull up. And all we're doing, if that seems really complicated and you know, all we're doing is making a slip knot. So if you know how to make a slip knot, just make a slip knot and put it on your needle like so. A slip knot, all it is that if you pull, it gets bigger. And if you pull on the tail, oh, I dropped it right off my needle. You pull on the tail, not the short one, the longer one, and then it will get tighter to your needle. So again, there is a ton of cast on methods. I don't prefer this cast on method, but it's very simple. It's perfect for beginners and they all work. The reason this is not my preferred cast on method is because it does not create as stretchy of an edge in your knitted project, which is perfectly fine if you're making, say, a pot holder, which you will be able to make after tonight. You could just cast on, 20, 25 stitches and do this knitting that I'm going to show you until it's the size that you want it to be, and then you'll have a pot holder. You could also keep going and make a scarf, okay? So I've got my 1 stitch on. I'm going to hold it with my finger. And then I'm going to wrap. I'm going to put my finger under the yarn. I'm going to wrap my finger. So see how I'm making an X on the bottom? And then I'm going to put the point into the loop and then pull it tight. Now I have 2 stitches on my needle. I'm going to show you that a few more times. And we're going to cast on, we'll probably do 10. So I push down and wrap around. See that? This is called the backwards loop method. I think I just did it backwards. Yes. So you can do it that way too. You can go down like this and around, and then you can come up. No, you can't. I'm so sorry. It's because I started with my finger on top. So underneath, around, and then put your needle in. I meant to practice this before, but I got busy today, guys. Sorry. I never use this cast on. So we're going to keep going and do 10. Under, wrap, and see it kind of makes that little X there. And then put your needle in and put it onto your needle. Under, wrap, needle point in, put it onto your needle, and tighten it down. I'm going to keep going until I get to 10. Under, up, wrap, makes that little cross there, needle point in, and pull down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, under, wrap, 7, 8, 9, oops, I split my yarn, 10. Okay, and what I mean when I say I split my yarn is that my needle went through the yarn like that. We don't want that. We want all of the yarn. We don't want it in between the plies. We want all of it on that side like that. So we put it on and tighten it down. You don't have to kill it when you tighten it down, just tighten it down a bit. So now I should have 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Now we're going to take this needle and put into our left hand. Okay, left hand. And we're going to take our other needle. I'm using a large cable needle. This is a size 17 needle. And we're going to start knitting. So we're going to take our right needle. I'm going to show you 2 methods of knitting. The first is English. It's also called throwing. And we're going to scooch our stitches towards the edge carefully so we don't knock them off. We're going to put our needle in this first stitch from front to back. On the back side, it looks like that, so the rest of your stitch is on that side. You're not going in between. See the space in between the stitches right here? We're not going in between the stitches. We want to go into the stitch, so into the loop of the stitch. So we're into the loop. Now, in English, we're going to wrap with our right hand, hold it with our left. I'm going to put my finger onto the yarn right here, and then I'm going to carefully pull the needle back through, keeping that stitch I just made on the right hand needle. Now we're going to slide to the right and take that stitch off of the left needle. And now you have 1 knit stitch. You can pull your working yarn a little bit to tighten that stitch up and clean it up. It's a little hard to see because it's the first row. So let's just go ahead and knit this row, practicing that English throwing method. So we go into the stitch with our right needle from front to back. We are in the loop of the stitch. We wrap the stitch with the working yarn, not this little short tail right here, but with our yarn that's connected to our yarn ball. We wrap, then hold with your finger. I am pinching it back here also. Hold the stitch onto the needle with your finger. Carefully bring the needle back through the stitch to the front, and then slip that stitch off the left needle. And again, you can pull and tighten it down a little bit. In through the front, wrap your yarn, pinch your stitch back to the front and off. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that to the end of the row. If you are watching and you think my technique is not perfect, I don't knit English, I knit continental, which I will explain in a moment. But this is usually the easiest for beginners, so I wanted to show this method first. How are we doing? Do we have any questions? Are we getting it? Does it feel impossible? Wrap, hold it, finger to the front and off. Then we do it again. Wrap, back through and off. Had a little knot there I had to work out. Back to the front and off. Now my stitches look a little sloppy because I'm using too big of needles for this yarn because I wanted it to be easy to see. It'll look fine once I get a couple more rows though. Wrap, back through and off. And my last stitch, always hold it with your thumb. I usually hold all my working stitches with my thumb to make sure they don't pop off the end. I'm gonna make sure we really get, see, it wants to go and not get by this knot there. I want to make sure we're inside the stitch. Wrap that last one and back through the stitch and off. So now we've knit our whole first row, and it's okay if it goes over here. It's no big deal. It'll slide back up on the needle. Now it doesn't really look like knitting right now, and if you're noticing that, then that's great. It's because it's the first row. It's okay. You can kind of see from the stitch, see the V? It looks like a person. If this loop is the person's head, it looks like they have a shawl around their shoulders. That is a knit stitch. Now I'm going to teach you the purl stitch so that we can go back in the other direction. That will create a fabric called stockinette stitch. Stockinette stitch is when you are on the right side of the fabric, that is the front of the fabric, it's all knit stitches. And when you are on the back side of the fabric, it's all purl stitches. You can see on this back side of the fabric, this is how you can tell a purl stitch. It looks like a little person's head as the stitch. And then this is like they've got a noose, or I always thought that sounded morbid, so I think of like a scarf wrapped around their neck. That's a purl stitch. And a shawl around the shoulders is the knit stitch. Can you see the difference? Okay, so now we're going to make sure that we don't have stitches down here, because we're going to flip and work our piece in the opposite direction. So we're going to flip our needle. Our working needle is always in our left hand, always. So we flip our needle and we take our empty needle, is always our working needle, in our right hand. I apologize if you are left-handed. I have tried to teach my daughter left-handed because she is left-handed, and it's not that easy. But you may be able to knit continental, which is only sort of that way. So now we're going to learn the purl stitch. There are several different fabric patterns that you can make with just the knit and purl stitch. I'm only going to talk about stockinette tonight so we don't get too confused. So for the purl stitch, our yarn, our working yarn has to be to the front. With the knit stitch, our working yarn is in the back. So we put our yarn, working yarn, to the front. We put our needle in the front leg of the stitch. Instead of going to the back like last time, if we were knitting, we would do this. For purl, we just go through the front. And then we're going to take our working yarn. I'm holding my needle with my right hand. Take the working yarn and wrap it around from bottom to top, okay? Then we hold it with your finger so it doesn't slip off. Put the tip back through the stitch. And then, just like before, we take those two together and we've moved our stitch to our right hand needle, and we've worked 1 purl stitch. So let's do it again. Our yarn stays in the front. We go into that front leg of that stitch, wrap around. You can do this with your right hand. If you do it with your right hand, you just hold your needles this way, take your working yarn and put it up there. I guess that's still sort of your left hand, but I think it's easier to just grab it with your left hand. So then hold your stitch, pull back through the loop, and off. Now we have 2 stitches. Through the front, wrap your needle, back to the back. Oh, see, now I'm more experienced, so I didn't hold my my stitch on there because I have enough muscle memory to manipulate the needles without having to hold the stitch. And once you start practicing, you'll get to where you don't need to also, unless you're using really slippery yarn or really sharp, fast needles. Wrap back through and off. I'm going to do a few more, and then I'll do a couple more slow. You can hold it back through and off. I do use this middle finger here to hold this stitch on this needle. And at first, you feel like your hands are trying to do 18 things at the same time. I totally get that. At first, I had a really hard time with having all of my fingers doing everything they were supposed to. But this is your basic hand position, which is just your fingers behind and your thumbs on your stitches. Then you use your fingers here to hold stitches, or you can sometimes use your middle finger to hold stitches. Put your needle through. Take your working yarn. I'm going to pull out another length of yarn because I've gotten a little bit short here. Take your working yarn, wrap from bottom to top. I'm holding it, pinching it here. Back through the stitch and then off. And we'll do that for the rest of this row, and then we will go back to knitting. Back through the stitch and off, through the front, around, back through the stitch and off, through the front, around, hold it, back through the stitch and off. Holding your stitches on your left needle is really important. That is the easiest way that you will drop a stitch, which will create a hole in your fabric, is by accidentally letting your stitches slip off your left needle. So really make sure you hold that stitch tight with your finger. Okay, so now we have row 2 done. You can see 1, 2. So we've got 2 rows. We're again going to put this needle into our left hand and put our empty needle into our right hand. And now we're going to knit another row. You can see our knit stockinette fabric is starting to form. After we do one more row of each of these as an example so that you can get a feel for it, I'll knit a few more rows the way that I knit, which is continental, just so I can show you the fabric a little bit better. Continental is knitting with your yarn in your left hand like this. I'm not going to teach that today because it is a more complicated way to hold the yarn, and it took me about 2 days of practicing it before my hand didn't feel really funky while I was doing it. But I will teach a class for that if anybody's interested in it. But I liked it because the pinky controls the tension of the yarn, and you don't have to stop to keep picking up the yarn to wrap it. It just carries along with you. You'll get to see me do it in a minute. But let's go ahead and knit this third row by throwing, English style. So when you are on the right side of your fabric, you will always be on an odd number row. And when you are on the wrong side of your fabric, that's the back, you will always be on an even number row. So if you are counting your rows, I use Knit Counter app. If you're counting your rows and you can't remember if you're on the front or the back, just look at, oh, see, I was about to do it the wrong way. The way that I told you I wasn't going to do it right now. You can look at what number and you'll know if you're on the front or the back of your fabric. Sometimes with seed stitch or garter stitch, it can be difficult to remember which side of your fabric you're on. So just counting your rows is a good thing. So I put it from front to back. I wrapped it around. I'm going to hold it with my finger and go through. How's everybody doing? Am I going too fast? Are you bored out of your mind because I'm going super slow and it's too easy? If you are confused about where to put your yarn when you wrap, it goes in between the two needles, goes around the back needle from right to left. And then we pull it back through and off. My stitches are a little loose because this isn't the normal way I knit, but it'll be fine. Wrap, back through, pull it tight, in. Now, I very easily could have made a super short, like 5-minute video. This is how you do the knit stitch. Put your needle in, wrap your yarn around, pull the needle back through, and pull the stitch off. But I have a lot of people tell me that they have a really hard time learning to knit. So I just wanted us to be able to take our time, really practice, go nice and slow so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So it kind of demystifies the whole thing. Oh, that's totally fine. Hopefully you will soon, and hopefully this will be helpful, and then you can come back and try it. It was kind of last minute, but I just thought with doing the giveaway and stuff like that, it was a good time to start the series. So normally I'll try and post probably at least a week before I'm going to go live, but it just kind of fit this time. So I'm going to finish my knit row. If you guys get started and you have any issues, you can feel free to message me anytime, and I will be happy to help you. Here or on Instagram is fine, or to my farm email, which is chicorypondfarm@gmail.com. Okay, so now we're at the end of that row right there. It doesn't normally look so stretched out. It's, again, because this is a huge needle, but I was just hoping that it would make it easy for you to see what I'm doing with the yarn, because no matter what size needles you use, it's the same technique, and as you get better at it, you can go smaller and smaller with your needles. I have some needles that look like, you know, pencil lead. They're so thin and so tiny for knitting lace, but once you perfect it, you can use any size needles. So this is the front, and you can kind of see that knit look of the fabric starting to form. Let's do another purl row, then I will knit a few more, a little more quickly, and then if there's any questions, I'll answer them and we'll be done. So we switch, work needle with the stitches goes in our left hand, empty needle in the right hand. We move our working yarn to the front. I'm going to pull out another length of yarn really quick. Working yarn to the front, and I like to hold it with my hand. We put the right needle in to the front of the stitch, wrap our yarn around, and hold the yarn down, go back through the stitch, and then off the left needle. You can absolutely get the circular needle at Walmart. You can get them at Hobby Lobby, you can get them at Joann's, Meyer, anywhere that has any type of knitting supplies should have circular needles. If you're worried, if you know that your Walmart doesn't have a big craft section, then I would definitely go to Joann's. There's lots of good websites online. Amazon sells them. KnitPicks sells them. Joann's has them. Oh, see, now I dropped my stitch. It's no big deal. Just pull this back out. I dropped my wrap. I didn't drop the actual stitch. Go through, wrap it, back through. But my Walmart carries circular needles, so you should be able to find them there. Back in that front stitch, around, hold it down, go back through and off. I know when I was starting to learn, I learned to crochet from a book. I tried to learn to knit from a book, and I sort of did, but I was just doing crazy stuff because I didn't understand how the knit and the purl work together to make a fabric. So I just had like really weird, I combined a bunch of stitches all in one sample thing to just practice them, and it was terrible, but I still didn't quite get it. And then I found a website called knittinghelp.com. I don't even know if it's still around, but they had little blurbs of someone doing stitches like this, and it was like light bulb moment, game changer, and then I got it. So I was hoping doing a video like this would help some of the people who say they have a really hard time being able to do it. Show you these last few stitches on this side. Wrap. And then I'm going to go ahead and knit continental style just so you can see the difference, and then I can show you a little bit more of the fabric, because once the fabric starts getting a little bit longer, it's a lot easier to see what it's going to look like. Now, stockinette stitch will curl on the edge once it's knit and cast off. Oh, I probably should show how to cast off too. I will do that in case you finish a project and want to actually finish it. So there, I finished that row. So I'm going to do a couple more rows really quickly with continental knitting, and then I'll show you guys how to cast off. So you can see this knit fabric starting to form though. You can see the little line of V's, and then on the back it looks very bumpy. That's your purl fabric. That's your purl side of the fabric. So if you don't want it to roll on the edge, you can do a knit row, a purl row, and then a knit row. Well, actually, you don't even have to do that if you're knitting flat. You would just knit 3 rows in a row. So even when you're on the back side, so you'll go knit your first row, you will again knit your second row, and then just go ahead and go to stockinette stitch, and that will give you a garter stitch on the edge, which will keep your fabric from rolling. This isn't rolling bad because it's so loose. Okay, so let me knit a few rows, and then I'll show you guys how to cast off in case you want to make a little pot holder, which I hope if you guys make anything using this, that you tag me in it on Instagram or send me a photo. I would love that. I am going to teach some more complicated stuff. This is literally bare bones, very beginning stages of knitting, okay? So I'm going to knit my row. I'm knitting continental now, which is what I'm used to. I feel like it's a lot quicker. I'm still actually knitting pretty slowly because it's somewhat challenging, guys, to knit while watching the phone rather than watching my hands, because it's almost like it doesn't feel exactly the same as when I'm watching myself knit without the phone in the way. So there's another knit row. And I always like to just kind of give my fabric a little tug down. It gets all my stitches seated, and then flip. If you wanted to make a hat or something, you would just do all knit stitches in a row, being sure not to twist it as you keep working. I will do a different video on that because there's a little bit more to it. Okay, so now I'm going to purl. I hold my yarn still in my left hand, but that's a little more challenging if you're not used to it. So that's why I did not teach it that way. But by all means, if you guys got this and it was like super easy, go look up stuff on your own. You don't gotta wait for me. That's how I learned. Once I got it, I was like, I want to know how to do all the things. And I researched knitting stitches, you know, for like 3 days in a row, just learning all different kinds of stitches. And then it's really practice. The more you practice, the more you'll build muscle and memory, and then the more you'll be able to do. And the quicker you'll be able to go. This is actually, I'm going pretty slow because you see this cable here, it's hitting this lap desk, and I can't get it out of the way, so it's making it want to like push up while I'm trying to work, which is not ideal. Okay, so now we have a little, this could be like a little face scrubby or something. And I'll show you guys how to cast off. So I'm going to pull. Casting off. Casting on is when you start the project. That's what we did at the beginning. Putting stitches onto your needle to work. Casting off is when you take the needles off and you make an edge that will not unravel. So we're going to cast off. So you're going to put your needle into your right stitch like you are going to knit. Oh, I'll show you the other way. You're going to knit that stitch just like you normally would. Just a normal knit stitch, okay? Boom, knit. Now we're going to do the second one. Knit the stitch just like normal. Now here's where the casting off part comes in. You take your left needle, holding this yarn so that these don't get all loose, holding this yarn so that your stitches stay tight. Put your left needle into the first stitch, and then we're going to hold with our finger here and pull this stitch over the second stitch that we knit. So now there's only one. Now we're going to knit this next stitch. Wrap your yarn around, pull your yarn through. Okay, so we knit the stitch. We're going to hold the yarn and hold the stitches. Put the left needle into the far right stitch. Hold the stitches with your fingers and pull that stitch over the one that was on the left. Now we're going to do it again. Needle in from front to back. Wrap your yarn for your knit stitch. Pull your stitch off. So now you have 2 knit stitches. Put your left needle into the right stitch. You can see this hole forming. It's because we're casting off this edge. Put your left needle into the rightmost stitch and pull that rightmost stitch over the one that was on the left. You can see, I'll see if I can show you guys. See, we're starting to form an edge there. We're going to have a little thing here. Okay, so let's do that again. In, knit, put it in the left, or I'm sorry, in the far right, and then over the left. In, knit. You might have noticed that I just went down from top when I did that. Instead of wrapping it this way, I went like this. That's okay. You just always do it the same way throughout your... As long as you do it the same way for your whole work, it does not matter if you go under or if you go over, okay? Knit your stitch into the right stitch, pull it over the left stitch, one left, knit your stitch, put it into your right stitch. I know I just switched, it's okay, this is just a sample. Okay, now, there's one stitch left. What do we do with that? You just would cut this length of yarn and pull through that stitch, and that will lock it down. You can tie a knot there, but I pull it through that stitch, and then I use a little darning needle, metal darning needle, or you can use plastic, it doesn't matter, and put your tail back through the fabric a little bit, and then it won't unravel. And then you have a little face scrubby, or, you know, blanket for a baby rabbit or something. So I hope you guys thought that was helpful. This was 10 stitches. If you used a lighter weight fabric than I used, your square will probably be a lot smaller. If you wanted to make a dishcloth size, I would recommend probably 40 stitches for worsted weight. This is super bulky. You could probably do 20, yeah, about 20 stitches for a super bulky weight dishcloth. I would not use size 17 needles with super bulky. I would use 13 probably at the biggest, maybe 15 if it's really fluffy. This is really close to actually being bulky and not super bulky. If you guys have any questions about stuff like that, send me a message, and I would love to help you out with that. I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys had fun. Thank you so much for coming, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.